Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Now, car owners in Lagos will now pay a minimum of 1,000 naira annually as the Lagos State government has imposed a proof of ownership certificate for all categories of registered vehicles. The new policy was announced by Engineer AbdulHafiz Toriola, who is the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Transportation at the Bagauda Kaltho Press Center, Alausa, Lagos. The Permanent Secretary said the certificate would cost a minimum of 1,000 naira and it is expected to be adopted across the states of the Federation. According to the most recent data from the National Bureau of Statistics, registered vehicles in Nigeria are about 11 million plus as of 2018. Nigeria's annual vehicle demand is 720,000 units. Local manufacturers supply only 14,000 units, which is leading to massive importation. Joining us now to discuss these issues is Emeka Obiariri, is a public affairs analyst, to share his insights on this development. Mr. Obiariri, good morning. Thanks for joining us. And like many people have said, welcome to, just like Tinubu in Lagos, we are now seeing, of course, the federal government, Tinubu in the federal government. It is, these stories have brought about, allegations of massive taxation that is about to hit Nigerians. Do you agree that this just might be one of such?
First of all, thanks for having me. Yes, this is one of such, but it does not make sense to me. And it does not make sense because if you look at the number of registered cars in Nigeria, as of today, it's about 11.86 million. Nigeria actually controls 75% of the number of cars in West Africa. Now, 1,000 per annum is about 11 billion naira. What value does it add to the economy based on the current market situation? One thing that worries me is that those in power are always looking at ways of stifling the economy, taking from the poor, making the poor poorer, while allowing the cost of governance to continue to blow out of proportion. What do we do? Why are we like this in this country? Do you know the impact of the other policies on the economy alone? Today, to import the cheapest car into Nigeria, you have to pay an import tariff of not less than 1.3 million naira. And are you aware that 95% of Nigerians do not end up to 1.3 million naira per annum? We're not even talking about buying a car. We're talking about just clearing it. Now they are trying to impose 1,000 naira on vehicles. What this government should be concerned about is how they will create the enabling environment, security, physical architecture to ensure that the average Nigerian is able to put money in their pocket. Is a man that is buoyant that you can tax. As of today, 95.4% of Nigerians do not even earn enough to come out of the poverty threshold of $5.50 income per day. And trying to introduce all manner of taxation, trying to extort more, while not costing the cost of governance, is a bit atrocious. This government should concern itself with putting in place programs. Look at today in Nigeria. The cost of clearing a vehicle in Nigeria is about 70%. In Benin Republic, in Togo, it ranges between 18% to 35%. That is why the average Nigerian will go to Cotonou, will go to Togo to clear his vehicle and find a way of carting it into Nigeria. What this government should concern is that Nigeria is a very big economy. Under the ACTFA framework, we are a massive economy that should act as a transshipment port for the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. From that sector alone, we can get nothing less than $25 billion if we plug in the holes. What should concern all this? Car is not a luxury, for crying out loud. Most of these cars we're talking about are low-end cars. The average Nigerians are suffering. The average Nigerians are being stifled. And you are trying to impose, take from them here, pick from them here, without creating the enabling environment for them to get into active productivity of goods and services. Do you know that if this government can put in place measures to bring in the 55 million unemployed and underemployed Nigerians into the formal economy, at least there's no Nigerian who is healthy and active that cannot make at least 5,000 naira income every day. If you create the enabling environment, security environment, the policy environment to put 55 million Nigerians who are currently underemployed and unemployed, that will be additional inflow of over 71 trillion revenue into the economy. And that is growing the economy by average of 22% from those who are not actively engaged. But all they are after is how they will pinch money from the poor here. Look at the other day, I saw the video circulating with a convoy of almost about 25 SUVs. And these SUVs are going to be fueled with taxpayers' money. This government should look back to what works for us.
The president's convoy is even bigger than that, much bigger than that. You know, and I saw a video this morning of the president's convoy, and this when he arrived Lagos yesterday, and we're talking 50, 60, even more cars in one convoy. And I did speak about this, earlier today. The NSA, Nuhu Ribadu, flying to Lagos to welcome the president, who went on a private visit to London when both their offices are in Abuja. So the whole idea of cutting down the cost of governance just doesn't seem, like anything the current government is after. Mr.
The president will beg to probably differ. I'd like us to look at the front page of the Nation newspaper. The front page of the Nation newspaper, the big story this morning reads that, according to the president, he says, "Our challenge is surmountable," Tinubu assures. This is, of course, as he speaks about Idel Kabir. And this is a headline that we've seen across different papers whilst we review them this morning. And I'd like to find out your thoughts. Does it really, with the way the current administration has been going on so far, does it really inspire hope and encouragement in the heart of Nigerians to think that, yes, it's been a bit rough? You know how sometimes there's a rough patch, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Can Nigerians really see the light at the end of the tunnel? Because it seems like it's been one difficult issue after another. Import duties have increased by 40%. They're adding 1,000 naira tax, which maybe to some might seem like, oh, it's just 1,000 naira annually. But when you've gotten the vehicle, you've gotten your proof of ownership at the point of purchase, what is really the need to keep paying 1,000 naira every day that would amount to every year, that would amount to billions yearly? So is there really that light at the end of the tunnel? And are these challenges really surmountable, Mr. Obiari?
Their actions do not in any way, form or manner, inspire confidence. What we have seen clearly is another bunch of looters, extortionists, taking over from where we stopped under Buhari. Because it does not make sense. I have lived in this land for over 23 years, postgraduate working experience. The richest man in Africa, Aliko Dangote, I've known him for over 20 years. You can never see Aliko Dangote in a convoy of more than 5 vehicles. That is the wealthiest man in Africa, wealthier than any person living in Nigeria and Africa. But here you see another local government councillor, chairman, going with a convoy of 6-10 vehicles. It does not make sense. The other day I read the Speaker of the National Assembly, House of Rep, engaged over 58 to do what in this country? Between 1960 to 1966, the parliamentarians were part-timers. Their salaries were tied to the pegs of office of civil servants. So it was part-time. They weren't even being paid more than civil servants. They didn't even have the kind of convoys. The richest man in Africa then, Sir Louis Odimegwu, was a parliamentarian. He was the chairman of 15 top corporations in Nigeria. The guy was going there as a part-timer. And I read a story about how he was insulted by one of the parliamentarians and he walked away. Governance was a call to serve. People made money in the private sector and come into the public sector to come and put in their money. People like Desamu Mbakwe, people like Alex Ekweme entered government and came out poorer. But today you see poor urchins fighting, bribing, killing their way into power just to make it a bazaar. What does the speaker need 33 to 58 to do as a speaker of this assembly? So if they want to inspire confidence, this is not the only country that have done reform before. In other countries, in Egypt, when Sisi wanted to do this kind of reform, the first thing Sisi did was to cut cost of governance down by 50%. Cost of governance across board. Today in Nigeria, over 2.2 trillion are stolen through budget padding. We do not have any zero budgeting process. All they do is year on year, they will just cut 20% into the past budgets and they will just keep on stealing. You will see sometimes, you look at the budget overhead, you will see over a period of 3 years, the same item listed, no checks, no balances, it is looting spree. If we must inspire confidence, cost of governance in Nigeria, it does not make sense. Today, we spent practically our oil revenues, our borrowings, our non-tax revenues from NIMASA, MPA, FIRS to service the profligacy, corruption, wanton waste of less than 1 million civil servants and public servants. For crying out loud, Nigeria is a 210 million populated economy. And we cannot build this economy servicing the corruption, the profligacy, the waste and irresponsibility of less than 1 million people who work in the public space.
I'd like to quickly jump in on something you've said. You've highlighted a number of areas in which we should cut the cost of governance, one of which would be the Speaker of the House of Representatives getting 32 to 33 aides. And then there's also the conversation about VIP police, or convoys, as we refer to them. A few days ago, I believe 2 days ago, the news carried that the Acting Inspector General of Police had said that VIP police is totally cut off. There's also been the conversations on religious pilgrimage. We did have that conversation yesterday. The government offering subsidized fees to religious pilgrimage. I'd like to find your thoughts on these two areas. One, the VIP police. He's promised that it is going to be taking off. Do you see that actually happening? And also, are you in support of the government funding the pilgrimage or granting some level of subsidy to those who want to go to Jerusalem or Mecca, as the case may be?
VIP policing is an anathema to economic growth. It also shows clearly the kind of segregated economy we run. There are first-class citizens and second-class citizens. Nigeria is practically under-policed. Less than 400,000 police men and women to police a population of about 210, 220 million. This, of course, there was always annual ritual. An IG comes into place, he calls back the VIP police, then the VIPs go back to him, give him his own informal economy, give them the own money, and they will reallocate them. It's an economy that is so huge. The kind of monies these VIPs pay to have those police, if it was actually officially allocated, I can tell you it runs into tens of billions of naira. But those monies go into private pocket of those in the police service commission and those are the police hierarchy. And which is very, go to the developed economies, go to Singapore, go to Indonesia, go to UAE, you will never see this kind of madness. On the issue of pilgrimage, Nigeria has no business sponsoring anybody to go on any religion, whether a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian. Government, in fact, let me tell you, agencies like the pilgrimage board should be totally extinguished, should be banned, should be removed from one of the MDAs. It does not make sense sponsoring anybody. If you're spiritual enough, you love God enough, you want to make. I'm a Christian. David said, "I cannot offer to God what cost me nothing." Anybody who has potential, who wants to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca, to Medina, to Jerusalem, to Rome, should be able to pay for that trip. God is everywhere. God is not in one location. So I do not see the reason why in 2023 Nigeria should still retain any agency for whatever pilgrimage board, be it Christianity, Islam, Hindu, whatever, even Orthodox. Those kind of agencies should be scrapped. Those kind of anathemic practices that have been destroying this economy should be removed and zeroed off.
All right.
I want to also ask, because there would always be the defense, that there is nothing wrong with increased taxation. And even during the campaign season, Bola Ahmed Tinubu did say, that one of the things was did he say widen the tax bracket? Or I don't remember the words that he used. But he basically painted the picture of, seemingly focusing a little bit more on taxation, which, economic analysts would argue there's nothing wrong with taxation, and so if we look closely at this, can we argue, or can the government argue that this is really just one of the policies with which they need to raise money for government? Nigeria is at a very, very critical stage financially and economically at this point. We cannot keep borrowing money. So can the government argue that there is nothing wrong with simply looking for or creating means with which to raise more funds for governance?
Osage, I am one of the people that believe so much that Nigeria is one of the countries that has the least tax to GDP. Nigeria tax to GDP is about 6 to 7%. It does not make any sense. In Egypt, in South Africa, it's about 30% tax. In fact, the last year performance of South Africa, out of the over $126 billion that South Africa earned, about $80 billion came by way of tax, personal tax and corporate tax. Why are Nigerians not contributing so much? There's a lot of leakages in the system, leakages and corruption in the public sector. And again, who will even tax? Based on the demographics, those at the lower end of the economic pyramid. As I tell you today, over 95.5% of Nigerians do not even earn enough income to escape poverty. The poverty threshold is about $5.50. $5.50 income a day in a month is about 127,000 naira a month. How many Nigerians earn 127,000 naira a month? That's the question you should ask. In other countries like Europe, even in some of the developing economies who are even better than in the early 60s, those who live below 5.5 income per day are actually placed under social security schemes. They receive stipends from government. So for a man who does not even earn enough to take him home, who depends on charities, helps from parents, from brothers and sisters, then you're charging him tax. Tax from where? You're actually taking from him what somebody who paid tax on gave to him. It does not make sense. So what we should be thinking about is how do we put in place the policy? See, public service is a place where policymakers are thinkers. People you place in public service are creative thinkers, people who are creative imaginators, who try to twinkle things to bring out policies, programs that will put everybody into active productivity of goods and services like we had in the First Republic. If we can put the 110 million adult population of Nigeria, if we can put 70% of them to work, we can easily grow this economy GDP by average of about 10 to 15% per annum. If the average Nigerian makes 5,000 naira every day, the working population about 110,000 minimum, and you tax them 10%, you will be putting into this economy on an annual basis over 200 trillion naira. But the problem is that those who make money without enterprise are not taxed because you can't even have any way of measuring them. If we try to, we have asked about digitizing operations across all the sectors. If you want to stop the leakages in all the MDAs, we must try as much to stop the human-to-human interface. Digitize operations from NIMASA to MPA to FIRS to other places. When we can stop the leakages, stop the oil theft, stop the insecurity across Nigeria, bring security back to the regions, to the communities. When the economy can work actively, when lives and property are secure 24/7, you will see Nigerians happy to pay tax. Nigerians provide their own borehole, they do their own roads, they provide their own electricity. So what is actually the work of government? They even provide their own protection. The VIPs who are paying police to give them VIP protection are not supposed to pay. If Nigeria is secured, VIPs will spend most of those money they waste paying police for VIP protection to other uses. Between 60 to 96, we never had any of this thing called VIP protection. Nigeria was secured because the physical, social, economic, governance, resource control framework was such that the regions operated at their own level. The competition was very rife. The North had the cotton, textile, and everything, granite pyramid. The West had cocoa and everything. The East had their coal, they had their limestone, they had their palm oil. We controlled 45% of the global palm oil market then. If we had maintained that trajectory, today Nigeria would be exporting only than $38 billion worth of palm oil. But we have abandoned those things because everybody's fixated with the fossil fuel coming from that delta. Nobody is thinking in the public sector. All they are trying to do is grab power, steal, loot, buy dollar, buy houses from Maryland to Dubai, and let the rest suffer and die. It does not make sense.
All right. We have information now that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is on his way to his house, his apartment in Bodilon in celebration of Eid al-Kabir. We see that he's just coming to the country from London and he's driving to his home in Bodilon. It's reported that the convoy was seen and there's about 120 vehicles. That's the reports that we're getting. It seems that according to the reports that we're getting, it's over a large number of vehicles of the president as he comes into the country, heading to his apartment in Bodilon, Ikoyi, in celebration of Eid al-Kabir. We just finished having a conversation about convoy, right? And the police removing VIPs. There's some Nigerians that have expressed concern as to why the president needs this much convoy or this amount of people going with him. I'd like you to react to that, but also, Mr. Obiariri, I'd want you to react to the president talking about how we should be considerate of the poor. He says that we should remember the less fortunate in celebration of Eid al-Kabir. And one video or one clip that we've seen trending on social media is where he says, let the poor breathe. We have that responsibility. But would you say that, from all indications, the actions they're displaying so far, does it look like they're actually considering the less fortunate? Are they really allowing the poor breathe? Their actions, their utterances is nobody direction. Their actions do not conform with their utterances. For crying out loud, in 1980, Nigeria had only about 4.1 million people who were under poverty. 1980. China had 769 people under poverty. Between 1980 to 2005,
China exited all the poor people within their rank. Today, China has only about 16 million people who are ranked as poor in a population of 1.4 billion. Nigeria here, we've succeeded in moving the number of the poor from 4.1 million to 133 million more dimensional poor. Singapore, the same thing in Singapore, 1965. But you look at what the Singapore and China do, they embrace education. As of 1980, the number of literate people in China was 62%. Today, it's 97.5%. In Singapore, the number of literate people was 57%. Today, it's 98%. Nigeria, illiteracy has continued to grow. We have 20 million kids out of school. If they actually care for the poor, they should start first of all. I believe that any nation that is at the position of Nigeria today must at least make it a law. Budget 50% of our revenues every year to take care of these three overheads. Education, 20%. Health, 20%. Security, 10%. Nothing less than that. Cut cost of governance. Make it compulsory. Basic education must be free and compulsory. Quality basic education. Any child that is old enough to be in school, that is not in school, the parents will go to jail without option of fine. Because if you look at the education system between 1960 to 1990, even somebody that did only primary 6 can read and write fluently. Today, you will see graduates that cannot even spell their name. That is how low Nigeria has fallen. Therefore, if these guys actually care for the poor, social intervention schemes must be put in. Education, health, and security must consume at least 50% of our budget across the 3 tiers of government. If they care, they should, within the next one, they should legislate, making it so. If we can bring Nigerians' literacy level to 90% over the next 4 years, or over the next 8 years, education has a way of liberating the mind. While I was in university, one of my friends told me, and I can't forget it, he said, quality degree certificate is one of the key to knock on the door of the elites. And I saw it because some of us grew up under multi-dimensional poverty. What delivered us was quality education, not just by any degree, education that imbibed knowledge. If we can bring the number of literate level in Nigeria to 90%, which China did, which Singapore did, which Indonesia did, Nigeria will be in a better position to allow the poor to breed. The poor can only breed when they have quality learning, education, and the quality learning, education, and the knowledge that can help them. Right. To be able to bring them, because when a man is learned and educated, you cannot easily manipulate him.
I'll just quickly mention, before we proceed with the conversation, that of course we've had Mr. Emeka Obiari reiterate the importance of our budgets and prioritizing what matters. And of course, this was in reaction to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's statement in terms of considering the less fortunate during the Salah, and also talking about the convoy. We're not quite sure what exactly the number of the convoy. There have been speculations as to the number of vehicles, but this is to mention that we're not quite certain what the number is. But although some Nigerians have expressed displeasure as to the number of vehicles that they've seen going with him, which might of course be a direct result of the discontent that many are experiencing at the moment with the taxes here and there. But over to you, Salge.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, there's a saying that the more things change, the more they stay the same, and so, Mr. Barry, are these the earliest signs for Nigerians to basically just accept that nothing will be different with the current government? Nothing will be different with regards cutting down the cost of governance, with regards investing more in security and investing more in education, investing more in infrastructure and the agricultural sector. Nothing will be different. We basically have just changed government, but it is the same, experience that Nigerians would have, maybe even worse in the next couple of years.
See, what we have seen clearly, their actions, their steps are totally in opposite direction with their beautiful policy pronouncement. In fact, from what I am seeing, from their actions so far, Nigeria will maybe actually be transiting from the regime of Jeroboam to the regime of Rehoboam. For Bible scholars, they will explain to you. Jeroboam, Israelis were crying that Jeroboam treated them so harshly. They will use whip on them. Jeroboam said to them, I will use scorpion and snakes on you guys. And that wasn't what happened. And that was what led to the breakage of Israel into 10 kingdoms and 2 kingdoms. I pray it does not come so to Nigerians. These guys must come down to reality. The laws of Nigeria must be amended. They must go. See, it's no longer optional for them because things are getting to a head. These guys must go back to the physical regime, to the governance regime that worked for Nigeria between 1960 to 1966. As a matter of fact, the 1999 constitution is a criminal contraption that we must do away with. If you have no need patching it, if the foundation is faulty, you can't continue patching a faulty foundation. We must take Nigeria back to 1966 constitutional physical resource control framework. That is the only thing that can save this country. The way we are going, what we have just have now, or what we have over the last 15 years, are just a bunch of elitist public and private sector bandits lording over the rest of the economy.
Mr. Nemeka Obiariri, thank you so much for joining us this morning for this conversation. We have more conversations coming your way this morning here on Breakfast Central. Well, thank you very much for your time.